IVM.
Do you often dream about leading a more creative life? Whether you wanted to be a painter, a dancer, a cricketer, or a photographer. Maybe you wanted to play games for a living. Growing up, financial responsibilities often take us away from our true passions. Now imagine if you could explore that creativity while still making sure that your family is financially secure. Find a way for the artist and the realist within us to coexist. करो पूरे अपने इरादे, अपनों से किए सभी वादे. SBI Life अपने लिए, अपनों के लिए. To know more about our insurance plans with wealth creation, log on to www.sbilife.co.in. IRDAI registration number 111.
Hey guys, IVM Podcast is turning 7. Can you believe it? It's been an awesome journey for me specifically. I was a guest on Karthik Nagarajan's podcast Filter Coffee to start off proceedings. Then, I started doing my own podcast, which was called The Traveling Professor's Diary, and then it's transformed into Smarter With Sid. I've done about more than 220 odd episodes along with IVM, and it's been such an awesome journey for me with these wonderful folks. I can't wait to see what the next 7 years brings for all of us. Here's your smart fact of the day. So YouTube is getting out of the business of originals. So YouTube Originals is no more. It is winding down its original productions team after more than 6 years. Earlier we'd heard that YouTube's global head of original content is going to leave the company, but YouTube has shut the entire original content group down. This Smarter with Sid episode is going to look at why did YouTube do this? I mean, when it's sitting on the biggest video platform ever, isn't that a no-brainer to produce your own content? Let's figure this one. Before we go any further, did you know that Javed Karim posted the first ever video on YouTube titled Me at the Zoo? It was posted on April 23rd, 2005, and the video has 221 million views. Over 221 million views, to be honest. And Karim is one of the 3 founders of YouTube. So when YouTube was started as a platform, Karim had created his own content, isn't it? And now today, YouTube is looking down upon it. YouTube doesn't want to create its own content. YouTube wants to put up other people's content, but not generate its own. It tried its hand for, the good part of so many years, but it's shutting it down. Now, is this a wise decision? Is this a wise decision? And what is a wise decision for a platform like YouTube? Let me regale you with a backstory of mine. My first job when I got out of Mica as a student was with Sony Entertainment Television. Now, Sony Entertainment Television was, at that point in time, aggregating content. We had started off with I Dream of Genie, which was kind of dubbed in the most weird way. And it was not anywhere connected to the Indian scenario. But then came Jai Veer Hanuman and Thoda Hai, Thode Ki Zarurat Hai, and a host of other programs. But these programs are obviously done by original production houses who are not really part of Sony, but Sony was signing contracts with them and showing their content. Sony tried to get into its own production, created its own studio, and one of the first things that it did was something called Hum Aapke Hai Countdown. I was the unfortunate brand manager on Hum Aapke Hai Countdown, and trust me, it was no picnic. The reason why it was no picnic was that there is a big difference in actually just aggregating content and displaying it on your platform. And certainly Sony Entertainment Television was a platform in the old media way to, producing your own content and putting it out there. Very few companies have done this. One of them is Netflix. So what has Netflix done differently? Now, Netflix obviously started off with other people's content, but it certainly started producing its own content. Netflix was, remarkably technology agnostic. She used to send across DVDs, used to encourage downloads, and then got into live streaming of other people's content and then its own content. And today, Netflix is known for its originals and it's really celebrated for what it is. However, Netflix, I would argue, is not a true blue platform. What I mean by a platform is that it's a little different from just a company, a website that is showcasing great content. And while Netflix is a fantastic company, it is not a platform wherein people can, just screw around and create small videos for the world to see. That actually is YouTube's ethos. So Netflix's business model is completely predicated by the fact that it's subscription based. You get a subscription and you get to see content. That content can be, leased by some from some other place, or it can be its own. On the other hand, YouTube has always been dependent on the advertising part of it, right? Advertising has subsisted or subsidized rather its platform. And why do I call YouTube a platform? Hey, come on, look at all those comments, look at all those investments that commenters make on any YouTube channel, especially, PewDiePie's channel or any other YouTuber's channel that is quite famous. It has its own community. People comment, people look at live stuff from Theories of Everything by Kurt Jamangal, and they wait for it, and so many other things, right? In fact, YouTube is so famous, but it treats all of its creators equally, which is one of the reasons why Joe Rogan moved from YouTube to Spotify, because he was actually getting a better deal as a content creator on Spotify rather than YouTube. Now, is Spotify a platform? Maybe that we can look at in some other episode. But let's look at the strategic decision that YouTube took to remove its own content. What perhaps it did not want to do was compete with its own creators and produce a polished level of content which its creators typically don't do. So if you look at YouTube, it has kind of moved away from its advertising model a little bit and has added the YouTube Premium to it as well. So if you take YouTube Premium, obviously you don't get the advertising, and you can also kind of not be keep the app on and yet listen to music or listen to any podcast on the go without actually actively being on the app. Now, these are the advantages that you get, and I kind of compare them to being on a flight but taking the business class ticket. Now, obviously, the flight is taking you from place A to place B, but you go there in more comfort and more style and probably are more relaxed and all of that. But essentially, the service is the same. Now, this metaphor of it being a business class flight versus an economy class ticket in the same flight is very important, because it tells us that YouTube is still a platform. It is taking you from place A to B. You can still see the same creators, but you can see the same creators at a certain level of comfort if you are a YouTube Premium subscriber. But now imagine if the business class part of any plane suddenly had its own cheerleaders who started creating, their own things, or maybe you had a personal chef over there, or maybe you had an entertainer over there. Suddenly you were getting into a part of the experience of the business class traveler, which was completely alien to the economy traveler. Now, that is something which YouTube was trying to do when it was producing its own content, and it has eschewed that. And I think it has wisely done so. Why would I say that? Do I not want more competition for Netflix? Of course I do. I do want more and more people to create some fantastic content. But from a business model perspective, I think it is extremely important for any company to realize what they are. YouTube is a platform. Netflix is not a true blue platform. Amazon Prime Video certainly is in the halfway house. Okay, it is a platform because Amazon is a platform, and Prime is certainly part of that platform. And so therefore Amazon Prime Video can be an aggregator as well as a producer of new content, and God knows what the hell that animal is. But for YouTube, it wants to keep itself streamlined towards its original value proposition. And I think it becomes extremely important for a lot of businesses to focus on their core value, what they're actually giving to the world, and stick to it and make it better around that. Understand that there is a fine line that if you cross, you get into some really difficult logistics, some really difficult operational stuff, some really difficult connecting to the customer stuff, which is not necessarily possible for all companies to do. And I'm not saying that this is a hard and fast rule. So if you take Amazon did a lot of sales on e-commerce, but then they went into the cloud and started some completely different business, and then they are into videos, which is a completely different business. But logistics is extremely strong with Amazon across various categories. They're used to it. They're used to running their operation in a very different way than YouTube is. YouTube is more focused on creators. And if I look at the content that creators put up on YouTube, it is not that typical kind of polished content that you will get on, say, a Netflix or an Amazon or wherever else. It is raw. It is the bottom of the tail. It is going to be unpolished a lot of times. And that's the fun of it, because you have a lot of these bottom of the pyramid creators who are coming up, and some of them become big and some of them become stars, and perhaps sometimes even have their own Netflix show. It's so weird that Netflix itself uses YouTube to push its own content by having a Netflix YouTube channel. So YouTube remains the number one platform when it comes to actually encouraging the small creator. And it's a pretty egalitarian platform. YouTube Shorts is something that YouTube is trying to do in order to connect to a different demographic that is enamored by Instagram and TikTok and the rest of it. And I'm not sure whether YouTube is going to particularly succeed in that effort, because it still is a very different demographic. But as far as this decision is concerned about shutting down content on YouTube originals, even though there were some good YouTube originals, I think perhaps it was the best call that YouTube took. I hope you like this episode of mine on Smarter with Sid. It's always good to look at certain trends that are happening in the real world outside, especially in the digital space, and have a commentary on it and actually get down to, why things are happening the way in which they're happening, and try and get to some home truths that we can then perhaps take beyond the example, take beyond the trend. And here the lesson is, stick as close to your knitting as possible if doing other things is not your forte or your strength. And hey, if you like this episode, do like and subscribe, and make sure that you listen to all the IVM podcasts if you like this podcast of mine. And please follow me. I'm on LinkedIn and on Instagram. I'm the Traveling Professor. Until next time then. Until next time.
Sometimes it feels like all the weight of the world is fallen onto my shoulders. And it usually happens on my downtime while I'm enjoying a nice game of cricket. It's like my family realizes that I'm watching cricket and just rush to ruin it for me then. My mom will come in ranting about some problem with the neighbors. My wife will come in shouting about how we need to redo our kitchen, plus also some problem with the neighbors. And my daughter will come in angry at me because the color of the new car we bought is not what she had wanted, which is apparently the biggest crime a father can commit. Plus, of course, some problem with the neighbors. If only things could be just the same, even if something were to happen to me. Unless www.hdfclife.com, select, done. Things aren't so bad after all. Live calm. With HDFC Life, click to protect life. The Life Protect option protects your family from financial uncertainty. Visit hdfclife.com to know more and for terms and conditions.
Hello. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On Storytellers and Storytellers, Vineet talks to Chavi and Mohit, the couple behind Shitty Ideas Trending, about their creator journey. On Big Talks About Tiny Human, Meghna and Devi Shobha share strategies on how to deal with difficult behaviors of strong-willed children. On Pulya Basi, Pranay and Saurabh discuss why Indian students go abroad in large numbers for an MBBS degree. On Probation Se Promotion Tak, Abhinav tells us the benefits of self-marketing through writing for public forums. And on the Life Manifesto, Zarina discusses red flags, how we can identify them, and how we can deal with them. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. It really helps us. Don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you're listening to. And also remember, you can check us out on YouTube at www.ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, SBI Life Insurance, Bank of Baroda, and HDFC Life Insurance. Thank you so much for making this possible.